Welcome to the Pat Mayo, our daily fantasy preview for UFC 186, or as they would say on les belles provinces from Montreal, Quebec, l'UFC 166?
Sac 86.
Sac. Yeah, there you go. I haven't spoken French in a very long time, but I will be doing my French accent for a lot of this. It's my contribution to this preview show because there's a lot of mixing and matching. I mean, somehow I actually got the fights right. Although, you know, we do the mispronunciation counter on this show, and I have been getting better. I'm down to 38%.
You're actually significantly better in recent weeks.
It's not bad, but someone tried to throw me off. Someone had Jackson instead of Johnson written down on my page. It's like they were intentionally trying to with me. I don't like that.
Like the Benny Delariush, right? They were trying to get you off.
I know. I don't like that. I mean, I don't want them to get me off in that way or this way either. I just have no part of that. I don't know anything about MMA, although I am learning week to week. What I do know is daily fantasy, so we're talking Kountermove in DraftKings for UFC 186. Cody Saft, the host of the Bookie Beatdown, and the man with the expert analysis. So I need to know what's going on here. So let's start with the main event, I guess. Demetrius Johnson or Demetrius Johnson.
Demetrius.
I just did a football show with Demetrius Thomas.
I'll give it to you.
Versus Kyoji Horiguchi.
Yeah, Kyoji Horiguchi.
All right, I'm gonna give myself an X for Demetrius. I'm in my own head on this one. So the DK price, it looks like Johnson is a big favorite, and the betting line is a minus 950. How the hell is this the main event?
Yeah, it was supposed to be the co-main event. The original main event was going to be a TJ Dillashaw versus Hennenbrow rematch. That fight got scrapped, moving, which was the original co-main event, to the main event. Now, with any UFC fight, if it's a title, it automatically goes above anything else. So in this case, if people preferred Rampage Jackson, or if people preferred any other fight on the card, no matter what, it would have always been the title fight that rules. So that's why Johnson's up here. And with minus 1,000, it is really what it comes down to is there is no challengers for this guy. So that's why the line appears to be so big.
Is he going to knock the shit out of this guy in the first round or what?
Yeah, you have to assume so. Here's the thing with Johnson. Because there's nobody for him to fight, the UFC, they've got to make these sweet features and these sweet packages that lead you to believe
that the other guy can actually do something?
Yeah. So for his last couple of fights, that's been it. And he's fought a gentleman by the name of John Moraga. And the same thing. They were like, this guy's from the streets of West Phoenix, man. You want to mess with him. Finished him, no problem. Chris Carriasso, same thing. Oh, this guy's, very underrated. Finished him, no problem. In this case, Horiguchi's been putting in a very good camp. He's a very young kid fighting out of Japan. He's not the number one challenger. He's not the number 2 guy. He's not the number 3 guy. He's not the number 4 guy. But unfortunately, he's the next guy logically in line to fight at this point. That is the exact reason why this line is so crazy. Is he going to get knocked down the first? I don't believe so.
Oh.
But is Johnson some good value even though he's so expensive? Yes, because at 125 pounds, all this guy does is speed. He's fast. He throws lots of power. He's got good takedowns. He's got a good finishing ability. If he does finish the fight, I believe it'll be in the 3rd, 4th, maybe even 5th round. So the fact is that he could score some good points.
Okay, so even if he doesn't get the first round finish, you think he'll accumulate enough along the way to make up for that, whether he finishes in the 2nd or 3rd?
Well, we see it with
Like,
heavyweights.
is it making it to the 5th here?
The 5th round, I think that's a little deep. I personally see it maybe in the 3rd or the 4th, but that being said, Horiguchi's such a young kid that I don't think he'll get tired. The biggest thing is maybe that the expertise of Johnson shines through in the later rounds, and that's what leads to the finish. But I have no reason to believe that Horiguchi, a kid that's 15-1, who's never been finished, I have no reason to believe that he'll be finished here. That being said, when you're fighting one of the pound-for-pound greats in the world, it's a tough task. So I see the fight just being a finish the later it goes, just because he'll make some type of mental error. But there's good points that can be scored here.
All right, let's go to the co-main event. It's
Which
back
one
on.
do you want to talk about?
Quentin Rampage Jackson versus Fabio Maldonado. And it's not on DraftKings. I guess the fight is late. Kountermove. Shout out to Kountermove by getting this up. $5,000 for Rampage. Fabio comes in at 4,600. Rampage is a minus 310 favorite. So it doesn't seem like the Kountermove prices are as off as the line would dictate. Is Rampage really that big of a favorite here? Or is this the public saying, hey, I know that guy, let's bet on him?
That's 100% what it is.
Okay.
When you hear Rampage Jackson, if someone asked you Quentin Jackson, more fans would be like, who's Quentin Jackson? Oh, well, Rampage. Oh, Rampage. That's the biggest thing. This guy's been fighting for a very long time. He's got a wicked highlight reel of knocking people out. So the casual fan hears the name Rampage Jackson, they automatically assume, oh,
he's
I
good.
remember that guy. And that's what they remember. Well, Rampage, he's knocking guys out. Remember when he knocked out Chuck Liddell? Oh, That was 2007. Times change, man. Times change. So the fact is they got this guy pinpoint as a knockout puncher. They got him as the kind of guy that finishes fights early. And if you look at his record online, yes, that is the appearance. That is that he finished fights early. Fabio Maldonado, he's a guy that's almost tailor-made for Quinton Rampage Jackson. So the aim for a lot of fans is that Rampage is going to knock him out in the first round, and therefore he's someone worth having. I strongly disagree with that.
Ooh.
I think Rampage is not in very great shape. He was getting sued prior this week, right? So the fight was initially supposed to have him at 205 pounds. Rampage goes to court, loses the court battle because his former company, Bellator, was like, you have a contract with us. You can't go fight in the UFC. So that keeps him out of the fight, which is why the fight got initially ruled off. So Fabio gets a new opponent at that time, Steve Bosse. So he's training the whole time. Rampage claims he's training, but now that the fight's back on, he claims, I can't make 205 anymore, but I can make 215. What does that lead you to believe, Pat? That he hasn't really been training as hard as he said
he hasn't, but doesn't the extra weight actually benefit him?
You know what? That's a great question. A lot of people, they don't like cutting weight. Rampage is in the category of guys that doesn't like to cut weight. Fabio's probably not cutting an exuberant amount
at least
as
say
well.
it Fabio.
Fabio Maldonado.
Is he Italian?
Steel. No, he's Brazilian.
Okay.
And he's just a rugged, tough guy. The fact is, when people say tailor-made, they're looking at it like, well, we just want someone that'll stand right in front of Rampage. That's to them what tailor-made is. But I think this is tailor-made for a guy like Fabio who, yeah, you can beat me up the first round, but I got incredible ability to take punches. If I last that first round, you're going to be tired. I'm not going to be tired. So the weight thing, the extra 10 pounds, that probably benefits both guys. Rampage not really known for his cardio to begin with. I just don't think that it's a great stylistical matchup for him. I think that Fabio is able to bring on the pressure. He's a little expensive on DraftKings. 10,600 is what I was able to get him at. I wasn't fully sold on that because it didn't drop down now that they replaced him, right? Initially, when he was fighting Steve Bosse,
I'm betting it's no longer available on DraftKings.
See, I went to go recreate my team earlier today, and it appeared that he was on, although his price had never changed. So he was 10,600 against Bosse when I exited him and recreated my
it won't
lineup.
Change.
10,600. So I'm thinking, geez, is that worth it? Not nearly as much as it's worth it on Kountermove, which you can get a far better deal. But the way it plays into my head, we talk about this every episode. Who are a good guy that has a good chance with a finish here? Fabio, maybe not the finish, but there's not a whole lot of good finishes on this card. So he's the kind of guy that can get cumulative damage the longer the fight goes, a good upset, a good significant strikes landed. I think that it's a good Fabio, honestly, don't think it's a bad pick.
All right, so for $4,600 on Kountermove, that's not a bad price.
Yeah, that's actually a great deal.
That's a way to save some money. So I'm going to throw him on the tentatively on the Kountermove team right now. And let's stick with the rest of the Fight Pass cards, because usually what I like to do is look at the prices on DraftKings, look at the prices on Kountermove, see if any of them are off, like if one's a favorite on one site, one's not on the other, then compare them to the odds. But everyone seems to be in line for this card. All the Kountermove prices and all the DraftKings prices are about even. So let's go to the Fight Pass cards, which I'm assuming, because they're not on DraftKings, they're on Kountermove, and there's some huge discrepancies here between some of the pricing and what the odds are. So let's start with the first one. Chick fight. Jessica Rakoczy.
Rakoczy.
Oh, I got that one wrong. Versus, Valerie Letourneau.
It was surprisingly pretty close. It was Valerie Letourneau. I mean, I'm
giving myself that one.
Despite your ridiculous accent, it was actually pretty close.
All right, so 4,400 versus 5,200. Yet the odds have it as plus 150 and minus 185. So the odds are dictating this fight is a whole lot closer than the daily fantasy price indicates.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, honestly, this one should be Valerie Letourneau's through and through. So I like her in DraftKings. If she was available in DraftKings, I'd be all over it there. She's only available on Kountermove, so I did go ahead and scoop her up, even though it's 5,200. And in terms of the actual betting line, I like it. I really do.
185 is good, minus 185?
Yeah, just the one reason for me, the reason I believe that this line is not even bigger in her favor is that she's typically a bigger girl, fights at 135 pounds. Now she's dropping down to 115 pounds. So that 20-pound drop, we don't really know how it'll affect her. She's not the greatest weight cutter that I've ever seen, so it could affect her a lot worse. Jessica Rakoczy, her professional MMA record is 1 win versus 4 losses. How does somebody with 1 win and 4 losses make it to the UFC? Great question. She's actually no, 38 years old from Hamilton.
Ugh,
yeah, no.
The Hammer.
The Hammer.
No. Good looking chick.
So she's a world champion boxer. She's a fantastic boxer. She spent a lot of time out in Vegas training. Good boxing skill set. Now there's not as much money in boxing. They don't get the big fights. She comes over to MMA. She goes to the Ultimate Fighter. Doesn't win the Ultimate Fighter, but gets a contract with the company. Hasn't fought in over a year, and now she's returning to fight Valerie Letourneau. I think this is a bad fight for her stylistically. If she gets taken down, she's going to get mounted. If she gets mounted against a girl like Letourneau, it's not going to go well for her. And inside track, you got to watch the show to get this sweet info. But I actually saw Jessica Rakoczy at a gym the other day, and she's getting beat up. So
really,
yeah, exactly. So the fact is that I don't think her training's going all that well. She's a single mother, so she's got big responsibilities on her own hand. Now at 38 years old, she's getting near the end of her career, and the fact is she doesn't have a ground game. So that'll be the difference maker here. Letourneau should get the win for 5,200 on DraftKings or on Kountermove. Sorry, I like it.
Keep rolling through these Fight Pass ones just on Kountermove. Daly versus Marcos. Same price, 4,800. Yet the odds say that Marcos is a minus 270 favorite.
Surprised it was that big, to be honest with you, because she's actually coming in short notice. But the fact is, in terms of Kountermove, I don't mind the price. Marcos is one of those girls. I reconfigured my lineup. She was on it initially. I ended up taking her out. We'll get to the other fight later. I went with Chris Clemons instead. But in terms of Ronda Marcos, she's got a wicked good wrestling pedigree, and she's able to control girls a lot. Against Aisling Daly, her opponent out of Ireland, she doesn't really have much wrestling. She's a good, tough girl, good ground game, very experienced, but not much in the way of wrestling. So initially in my head, I played it as Marcos will take her down. She might sub her. She'll pound her, and she'll get points. But then when I keep replaying the fight in my head, if all she does is get the takedown,
that's not a whole lot of points.
She's unable to do much else. It's not going to score a whole lot. So I prefer to go for Clements in that regard.
All right, so let's get to Clements versus Nordeen Talib.
Yeah, but Talib, that's fair enough.
I'm giving myself a check.
No, I'll give it to you.
Both coming in, and it's almost the identical scenario in terms of pricing, both 4,800, yet Talib, what was it? Taleb?
Yeah.
Taleb?
Yeah.
I don't like that. I'll call him Talib.
Nordeen, the machine.
Oh, that's good. It rhymes. You got to have a rhyming nickname.
Or in French, it'd be Le Machine.
Oh, Le Machine. He's a minus 270 favorite here. Yet again, the prices are identical. So is he someone to, or do you think that he's overvalued and Clements is undervalued?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. When I broke down this fight card on Bookie Beatdown with Paul Shaughnessy, we talked about some of the underdogs that had a good chance of coming through, and Chris Clements was exactly that guy. At 39 years old, he is certainly making his little last run in the UFC anyways, but he's looking as good now as he ever has. I mean, he only fights about basically once a year. So he's not the 39-year-old guy who's training hard every single day, getting ready all the time, and having his body break down. He himself likes to pace himself out, space himself out in training sessions, and do all that. So I really like Chris Clements. And the fact is that he's a very sharp puncher. His punches themselves are very sharp, very accurate, and very powerful. Nordeen is younger than him. He's faster than him. He's stronger than him. He trains at a better gym than him. And he's put a full camp in this, as Clements has taken at short notice. Those are all reasons why people are going to like Nordeen as opposed to Chris Clements. But I've seen both these guys fight multiple times, and I think Chris Clements could be the kryptonite to Nordeen's machine and put him away here.
Should I be getting in on a two-fight parlay, Clements and Letourneau?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I mean, you got a good-sized underdog in Chris Clements.
And a minus 185, which isn't so bad for a parlay.
It really isn't, exactly. So you'll get plus money on that. And
big time plus money.
Exactly. And so it's a situation where I think both of them... Chris Clements is really one of the underdogs on the card that I look at that I think, geez, this guy's got absolutely does have a really good shot. So
let's move back to the
main card.
Yeah, the main card here. Is there anything that you see that jumps out to you right away as a finish? Because there's one thing that jumps out to me, but it's only someone's name, and I really want to say it at some point. But we'll get beyond that. You know what name it is, don't you?
I'm waiting for it.
You know which one. I'm looking at it right now. It looks. Let's just get to that fight. I'm going to go with David Michaud versus OlivierMercier.
Yeah, OlivierMercier. I'm sure that is how he pronounces his own name. So David Michaud was probably it's like Danielle Michaud, but David, right? It's very, very similar.
I would assume it's David.
David. He's not even French. He's an American guy.
Well, his last name is Michaud. I thought he was French. I thought it was a French-on-French fight.
Michaud. Yeah, exactly. You know what? This is a fun one too. I like OlivierMercier, I really do. And looking at this fight, I thought, wow, maybe he's got a real good chance for a finish here, because I figure he's a judo black belt. He spent time on the Canadian national team for judo. He's a very high level grappler. He should be able to win. But word on the wire and from different gamblers out there, and just kind of like the general consensus is everyone keeps saying don't bet against Michaud, that he's got a state wrestling championship in high school, and that he's got good grappling fundamentals, and that he actually is a problem. So the more I think about it, this is exactly a case like we talked about earlier, where Ronda Marcos, you can get the takedowns, you can get them to the ground, but if you can't finish them and you can't pound them out, you're not going to score as much as you possibly could.
And for $11,000 on DraftKings or $5,300 on Kountermove, you need to have one of those high finishes.
I know, absolutely.
That's over 20% of your bankroll right there. So they need to earn back all those points.
So Michaud far cheaper might be a good look.
I was going to say, for 8,400, if you want to build a Stars and Scrubs roster, he could be a scrub that gets 2.5. Like, do you think he gets finished, or do you think this goes to decision?
To be honest, yeah, I think it goes to decision. The more I think about it, Olivier Mercier.
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 Oh, baby!
He's got good skills. He really does. But if there's one thing about him is that at 5-1, he just really hasn't experienced the full spectrum of mixed martial arts yet. He's really coming into his own. So the fact is that he's training on this card with other guys from the same gym at 155 pounds, all competing on the same card. So physically, they're all going to be peaking at the same time. So there's no doubt in my mind that he will be well conditioned. But for $11,000, I need to think that he's going to get that finish. I'm not fully sold on it. I'd rather get something like another girl fight on the card, Alexis Davis versus Sarah Kaufman. I like this fight for a number of reasons. They've fought twice already. Sarah Kaufman has won both of those fights. But both times, action-packed fights, especially the last time. The last time, in my opinion, one of the best fights of the year. They stood toe-to-toe. They absolutely throw. They are going to score a tremendous amount of points.
What were the outcomes in those fights, though? Were they
decisions? Yes.
Both decisions?
So
taking someone like Alexis Davis at 9,000 or 4,500 on Countermove, she's going to go the distance and land strikes along the way. That could be a points bonanza.
This is the first time I ever thought about this to myself as I was watching the fights this past weekend. And I never go against myself. I never take two fighters that are fighting against each other because I'm thinking, well, I want one person to knock the other person out fast, and then that's going to screw my team up. Then I thought to myself when I watched, it was Felice Herrig versus Paige Van Zandt. It really dawned on me, you know what? Both of these girls, they're little whirlwinds. They throw recklessly. They shoot crazy takedowns. They flip. They take each other's backs. They get up. Felice loses that fight and scored a lot of points in defeat and wasn't all that expensive. Then I really thought to myself, you know what? It's not a problem to take two people fighting each other, as long as you think it's an all-out war and both of them are going to have their moments. And this might very well be that fight. So I actually took Sarah Kaufman and Alexis Davis on my team as a way to...
On DraftKings?
On DraftKings, yeah, absolutely. It was $10,400 for Sarah Kaufman on DraftKings, which I know is expensive.
It is expensive.
$9,000 for Alexis Davis.
It's fine.
Certainly more doable.
We don't want to put David Michaud on here?
Well, he's $8,400, and the fact is even if he's just getting taken down the whole time and he's not getting finished, he's not scoring anything.
I suppose that's true.
I would rather, no matter what, I would rather two strikers who are going to engage each other standing than people that are going to grapple on the ground. Because when you're grappling on the ground, you can get points, no doubt, but submissions don't happen as frequently, first of all. And second of all, if I get into your side control, I'm good with side control. I'm not trying to mount you. I like side control. There's not a whole lot of position changes, so you're not scoring a whole lot. You notice it with girl fights a lot, is they'll stand in front of each other, and they'll throw caution to the wind. And they'll do this, and they'll land 4 or 5 shots. That's scoring me 2.5, 3 points, right? The more, it's half a point per significant strike, the more that they just stand and engage each other, the better for me. And if you watch their last fight, it's a points dream if you have either one of them. And in this case, I'm going to make the bold move of trying to take both.
So you're going to take both on DraftKings. You probably don't go with Kaufman at $5,100 on Countermove, but would you go Davis?
Fair. I did not, and I did. For $4,500 on Countermove, I honestly, I felt like I couldn't go wrong. So I doubled up on DraftKings and then simply just went Alexis Davis on Countermove.
Okay, Joe Riggs, Patrick Cote, $9,100 versus $10,300 on DraftKings. But on Countermove, they're only separated by $200, $4,700 and $4,900. Do you have a good feeling about this fight either way?
I really don't. Joe Riggs, I'm a massive fan of his, but at 32 years old, he's already had 55 professional MMA fights. Yes, exactly. 40 wins, 15 losses. I've seen him midway through a fight hurt his back, and the fight was called off because he had a hurt back. In his last fight, the fight got called off early in the first round because he hurt his neck. His body's just breaking down. That being said, he's such a savvy veteran. I don't think Patrick Cote is going to be able to just, push a pace on him and break him. I don't really think it happens. For some reason, I think this fight's not scoring a whole lot of points. I mean, it's both like-minded guys who are both strikers. Theoretically, a guy like Joe Riggs could get hurt, and that's going to score points for Patrick Cote, but I don't think he gets a clean finish.
So stay away fight.
I'm thinking stay away. At the very least, if you can fit Patrick Cote on your roster, he's the better pick because let's say, for example, they're exchanging shots, it's in the first round, and something happens to Joe Riggs and he hurts himself, right? Then that's going to be points for Pat Cote. And a random story here, Joe Riggs actually accidentally shot himself a couple months back. He was cleaning his gun, although my brother has a theory that his wife shot him and he was covering it up because he loves her still, right? Gotta love America. But that's exactly it. This is a guy that, injuries aside, he's physically blown a part of his hand off and shot himself in the leg. So, love the guy.
Look,
absolutely love him.
Plaxico Burress came back for like a year and he was okay.
Was he okay?
He was okay.
Well, Joe Riggs was able to come back to the UFC. It's a big question of whether he's going to win. And just a guy that cutting down to 100 270 pounds. It takes its toll on him. So I'm passing on this one in terms of DraftKings counter move. However, if there was a smarter pick of the two, I think it would be Pat Cote.
Chad Laprise versus Brian Barbarina.
Brian Barbarina. Out of the MMA lab in Phoenix, Arizona. This guy, very legit, very legit.
Really, but he's only 8,500 on DraftKings.
Because he's fighting Chad Laprise. And if you look at the money line, it's nearly a 4-1 for Laprise. So that would indicate that good value here.
I have it at 335 for Laprise. That probably means that you saw it and it got bet down. That means money's coming in on Barbarina.
Barbarina, in his UFC debut, he fought Joe Ellenberger, and then people weren't really touting him as having much of a chance. But man, this guy's made out of punching power. I mean, he's solidly built. He's a gamer. He's a young kid still. He's learning it. And he's training out of what I would refer to as an MMA super camp, a gym that just continuously pumps out good prospects, good up-and-comers, as well as established veterans. So he should be completely on pace to do good things. Now, Chad Laprise, another guy that fights out of this TriStar gym. So he's training with a guy like OlivierMercier. He's training with other guys.
Oh, baby, Mercier.
Nordeen Taleb is another guy that's in that gym. There's an entire crew of guys that are going to be fighting in and around that weight class. So Chad Laprise, I'm very impressed with him. I very much am, but I don't think he knocks out Brian Barbarina.
So then he's a stay away then at his price at $10.90.
Then he's a stay away at his price. Now Brian Barbarina, flip side, 8,500. Is he worth having a look? Yeah, certainly not the worst look you could have for a cheap player.
Yeah, if you want to go stars and scrubs, maybe you play 3 or 4 lineups, and you can. There seems to be enough scrub territory pricing
for sure
between 8,400 and 9,000 on DraftKings that you can fit some of these guys on your roster and maybe have a chance if you want to go high end. But it doesn't seem like many of these super expensive guys are really worth the price.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Listen, and
you have 2 people from the same fight on your DraftKings team.
Yeah, for the simple reason that
I get that, but I mean, if this was a better, like last week when we talked about it on Kountermove, you identified 5 fights like these. This is going to go this way.
Yeah.
And we need to have these 5 on here. We can't take the other side of it because this is how it's going to go. This week it seems like there's a lot up in the air despite the odds being kind of wide.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, theoretically speaking, and I know this is going to sound ridiculous, but even in the main event, on my DraftKings team, and then I'm just playing around with it, seeing what works and what doesn't, but I took Kaufman and Davis went against each other. I also took Demetrius Johnson and Kyoji Horiguchi because Horiguchi for 8,200, he is just so unbelievably cheap that we talk about it all the time. It's a 5-round fight, so if it does go 5 rounds,
he's going to make those points back.
He's going to be able to make up those points, and if the fight doesn't go 5 rounds, well, he's an able-bodied fighter that could possibly score good enough that for 8,200, okay. Because the other players that you're getting for 8,200, scrubs. And if they get subbed really quick or whatever the case is, if they get finished really quick, I'm not going to be very fond of that. So, once again, this is a very difficult card. As I mentioned before, when I looked at this card and I thought, who's got a good chance of getting a finish on this card? There's not a whole lot of names that jump at you. There really isn't. Shane Campbell, a guy that we haven't talked about yet.
Let's go there right now. Shane Campbell versus, oh boy, John Makdessi.
Yeah, perfect. Nailed it. And you got Shane Campbell, because, that was a tough one.
It was a tough one. I could have called him Campbell.
Yeah, Shaolin Shane Campbell. This guy, he's pure talent.
$8,900 too.
If you want to stand in front of him, he's putting you away, and then that'll be points for him, 100%. But John Makdessi, another guy out of the same gym, who's training with all these other guys at 155 pounds out of TriStar. He's out of a gym that they're not, I don't want to say stupid, but they're not gullible enough to say, oh, yeah, let's stand in front of the striker. They won't do that. They'll take him down, and they'll hold him down. And that's not scoring points either way. Because Shane Campbell,
double stay away then.
Shane Campbell's the points guy if he's on his feet, and I don't think he's going to be on his feet here. Makdessi's not going to score a whole lot of points if he's holding him down, so bit of a stay away.
And probably not likely for, the finish probably, if it's going to be a quick finish, it's probably Campbell, but you still see it as a quick finish either way.
No, if it's a quick finish, it's Campbell. If it's a late finish, maybe Makdessi's able to take his back and choke him out with the rear naked, but truthfully, I think Makdessi just holds him down.
Bisping?
Bisping. Super fun fight, absolutely. But Michael Bisping doesn't typically score a whole lot. He scored big against Kung Lee, but that was a 41-year-old aging Vietnamese guy standing in front of him. So in this fight against Clarence Byron Dalloway, I just don't see it happening. Dalloway's able-bodied enough to push the takedowns, to use his own striking. Hell, Dalloway might even upset Bisping and get the win. But I don't think he upsets him enough to score points. He upsets him in, I hit you a couple times, I take you down.
And hold you there.
Yeah, I win 2 rounds.
Please don't hit me.
Yeah, I win 2 rounds, you win 1. Judges give me 29-28. My hands are raised. I don't think there's a whole lot of points to be scored there. However, Dalloway was fairly cheap, so
you could squeeze him on somewhere. Oh, I'm going to have trouble with this last name here. Thomas Almeida? Almeida?
Almeida. Did you just have Almeida?
Yeah, look, listen, it's on the sheet.
Well, it's supposed to be Almeida, which means from Almeida.
Oh, I bet you that means the board's wrong too. Damn it!
Uh-oh.
I don't
want to. If it just says Almeida, you're fine. If he was French, though, it'd be Le Almeida.
Oh, L'Allemagne. And then he's taking on who I assume is if this guy is American and pronounces his name Yves. I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to think it's Yves Jabin.
Yeah, he's actually Haitian. So
No, well, he's French then. So it makes sense.
He's the tiger Jambouin.
Jambouin?
Jambouin.
Janway, Yves Janway.
He's been around for absolutely forever. And what I'm trying to say to people here is stick away from Thomas Almeida just because his price would indicate that he's going to finish Yves here. Yves has been finished before in the past, so it's not like I'm saying it's impossible the guy gets finished. But at 35 years old, he appears to be fighting better now than he has in the past. And normally he's just a striker. If he was just a striker and he wanted to engage his kid standing, I'd be a little worried. But in his last fight against Mike Easton, he showed that he has very improved wrestling skills. I think he gets this fight to the ground. Does he win? Possibly. You know what? If you like betting straight money line, he's like a
minus 450.
Exactly, right? So for plus 365 on Yves, it's not the worst look out there. But, that being said, in terms of DraftKings Countermove, this is a stay away from me.
This is kind of a boring card for DraftKings.
Yeah, I'll tell you something about cards in Canada in general is that the UFC doesn't typically give a crap about Canadian cards. So if you look at it, they do not stack up to their American counterparts. And mostly because the aura is, Canadians, they love MMA so much, they don't really care what they're watching. Mark my words here, this pay-per-view in Montreal on Saturday is going to sell extremely low. I think the Bell Center sets about
19,000.
19,000. I would say that this does ballpark 7,000. Yeah, not good. Very not good. George St. Pierre's not on this card. There's not a whole lot of star power French Canadians on this card. It is going to be a dead atmosphere. I think the fights might be entertaining. They might be. They usually are with the UFC.
Just there's no star power.
But there's no star power. So I agree completely. When you look at this, there's not a whole lot of things that get you salivating. There's not a whole other than you got a main event that's supposed to be a blowout, 10-1 favorite. You got a co-main event where the guy only just got left the court, a day ago and is hopping back in the mix. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't really have the things you're looking for. That being said, I usually am very entertained sitting down and watching these. So
are you going?
I've decided not to because of the poorness of the card. I mean, Rampage got put back on, so that helps out. But initially, when you had Henan Barrow on it, initially when you had Rory McDonald versus Hector Lombard, prior to him testing positive for steroids, it was a good-looking card. Now, not so much. So I figured, a cold beer in the comforts of my home would be good for this.
Probably a little bit better. Cody Saftik, thank you for being on the show. You can watch Cody every Friday on Fantasy and Fight Network on the Bookie Beatdown with Paul Shaughnessy. You can follow him on Twitter at CJ Saftik. You can follow me at the PME. And remember, go to iTunes and leave us a review. Me a review. Primarily. Make it a 5-star review if you can. 4's not bad. 3, just don't go below 3. How about that? I need the reviews. You keep them coming, I'm going to do fine. You're going to get some more Pat Mayo Hour. I'll be back next week to, what's the next one?
Oof, so many UFC cards. So many.
What's the next one?
We'll be back every week. I can't even tell you. Fight night.
Sounds terrific. We'll be back to break down the card. Probably a lot of value to be had on a card that no one, even the guy who knows everything about MMA, doesn't even know what the card is. So anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.